And you know who else is also a guy that respects the truth, respects the numbers, is our friend John Lott Jr., president of Crime Prevention Research Center. He's the guy who wrote the book, More Guns, Less Crime, Makes Sense to Me, taught at University of Chicago, taught at Yale. So don't hate him, DeSantis. I know you Harvard people have an animus towards the Yaleys. So just behave yourself.
Go Crimson.
Go, stop it. Stop it. Go eat your McDonald's. And John also has great stuff always on X at John R. Lott Jr. You should follow him, but hang out with us. John, it is good to get you here. You're back from wherever the heck you were traveling the last time we were looking for you. Welcome.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, I was in Argentina giving talks, but I also taught at Wharton, so I don't know if that kind of balances off some of the other places that you mentioned. But
it makes
anyway,
DeSantis hate you twice as it makes DeSantis hate you twice as much. He's just over there. He's turned crimson. He's so mad. He's turned crimson. So, but I'm glad you're here. I want to get to a couple of news stories today that you're talking about as well. One of those is the big news story we haven't discussed, and it broke before the markets opened this morning, that Meta, which is the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, settled its case with these various attorneys general and has agreed to pay, golly Bob, howdy, almost $18 billion to settle claims that they were making their content addictive to children and misled the public about their platforms and its safety. And I like your one-line take on this, John, and I'm not going to steal it from you. You looked at that news, and what was your first reaction?
Well, they must have been pretty afraid of what was going to happen in the court case. I mean, they did it before Zuckerberg had to testify. I mean, there's things like nuisance payments that you make to people to make cases go away, but this was a little bit more. Over $17 billion is a little bit more than a nuisance payment.
And you have to wonder, as you said, before Zuckerberg was called to testify, there suddenly is a settlement offer on the table. Were they doing the math? Is $17 billion, is that a nuisance payment for somebody who's worth a couple $100 billion?
Oh, I mean, it's the company that's paying it, and $17 billion. That's a non-trivial effect it's going to have on its profits that it has. It's a lot of money, and they must have been worried that they would, if they went to trial. I mean, as mind-boggling as these numbers are, even $17 billion, they must have believed that they were at risk of maybe facing a penalty that was even much greater than $17 billion.
Had to be. It absolutely had to be. The other topic that I saw you weighing in on social media was election integrity, and I still am mystified by the fact that we were unable to get the Save America Act across the line in any way, shape, or form. But every time I look up, it seems like there is a state that's telling us that not only are people that are here illegally registered to vote, but they still got a lot of dead people registered to vote. Where I grew up in Chicago, we just assumed that about a quarter of the population that was voting was dead. But it seems like this is now everywhere in the country. In Michigan, you've got them saying that 95% of the dead voters are still marked active on the Michigan rolls. John, this is madness.
Yeah, I just look to see the rate that people typically who are registered to vote have voted in past elections. And in 2022, you had about 54.7% of all registered voters voted in the elections in that general election in November. 67% voted in 2024. So you're saying that these dead people are much more consistent voters than live people who are registered to vote, which is, that just shows how dedicated even the dead people are to go and vote.
Well, they're very reliable voters, and I'm wondering maybe with the Supreme Court ruling that hopes to tamp down on some of the unverified mail-in votes, that maybe if we put the clamps on the mail-in voting, the dead won't be able to get to the post office as much. Just throwing it out there. Possibly?
Right. Well, I mean, there are lots of states, New Jersey and Pennsylvania and others, that won't turn over their voter registration lists to the federal government to go and check. Under the Civil Rights Act, the federal government has the power to go and check this. I mean, these are laws that were passed in the 1960s, but they were there, put in there in order to make sure that states didn't do kind of improper things with voter registration lists. But for some reason, a number of states, I can't remember the exact number, whether it's 19 or 20 across the country, are refusing to turn over their voter registration lists so that the federal government can go and check to see, are these people alive or dead? Are they American citizens or not? You have to ask yourself, why is it, in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, something that the Democrats will fight tooth and nail? I mean, my guess is they'll eventually lose in the courts on this, but they want to delay turning over these things as long as possible, at least until after this year's elections. And, it raises real concerns. If you have 95% of the dead people voting in Michigan, that can affect the outcome of elections by a lot.
Well, if 95% of the dead people are voting, that may be the highest percentage of participation of any demographic, wouldn't you say? And maybe
they're very dedicated voters. That's the only thing I can say. Should
we not start focusing on campaigning to dead people? Is that not something we would recommend?
There are probably some issues that dead people care a lot about that, politicians just haven't, their experts, their campaign consultants haven't had them focus on. So it's a real market that they're missing out on.
I want to talk with you, John Lott Jr., about something you posted at crimeresearch.org that I think more of this kind of move needs to be made in order to put in the spotlight the real beliefs of the Democrat Party, especially as we get now under 70 days to the midterm elections. The headline of the piece reading, just 15 House Democrats were willing to sign a letter saying that, quote, we want safety, not lawlessness. I thought this piece is a perfect setup for campaign help for any Republican who's in a competitive district, especially in a district with a crime problem, to say, hey, why would you elect somebody who doesn't want you to be comfortable, to be safe, to be able to walk the streets? The promise to America is pretty simple, and you only saw 15 elected Democrats in Congress able to sign that. That's stunning to me.
Well, yeah, it was kind of stunning to me too. So the statement was by these 15 Democrats who say, quote, we believe Americans deserve secure borders, safe communities, honest government, and an orderly immigration system that protects the country, strengthens the economy, treats people with dignity. We believe America remains indispensable to global stability, democratic values, international security, strong alliances. I don't know. It seems like a pretty straightforward, bland statement to a large extent, but unfortunately, it's just not that. I put up earlier statements because obviously there's been these concerns about Democrats who go and say things. They want to abolish the police, they want to abolish prisons, they want to abolish ICE, and the thing is, if you look at it, you have over half of the Democrats in the House voted to defund ICE, which is kind of stunning to me. There was a resolution put forward to go and say to oppose defunding the police, and 61 Democrats in the House voted against that. So, it's pretty large percentages of the Democratic Party there who don't believe police should get funding, who a large percentage who don't believe that ICE should get funded. And, they want to basically return back to the types of border policies that we had during the Biden administration, where we had an open border. We had 12.8 million illegals that we know came into the country, either those who turned themselves in at the border, those that were caught, or so-called gotaways that we saw coming across the border we didn't catch. But we don't know how many more millions came in, because we had 67% of the border agents were pulled off of their job during the Biden administration and no longer guarding the border. They were instead processing all the illegals that were coming in. We had 30% of the monitoring equipment along the border was broken, and the Biden administration refused to spend any money to go and fix those broken detectors that were there along the border. So we have no idea how many more millions came in. To me, it's not a coincidence that during the Biden administration, we had the largest percentage increase in felony violent crime over any 4-year period, a 59% increase that we've ever seen since the Bureau of Justice Statistics started collecting that data. It's not coincidence that it increased then. And I think it's pretty clear that it fell this last year and it's continuing to fall this year. The last year, go ahead.
I was going to say, John, about that, you wrote a piece in Real Clear Politics last week about the politics of falling crime. And we have seen President Trump repeatedly talking about the low murder rate, the drop in violent crime, talking about how the cleanup of crime in D.C., the cleanup of crime in Memphis, which is a notably a Democrat city. I can draw the connection between the removal of some of the criminal elements who have either been forcibly tossed out of the country or self-deported, and I can tie that to lowering crime rates. You have Democrat mayors who are taking the credit for lowering crime rates, specifically Chicago's mayor, who I think is maybe the worst big city mayor in the entire country, Brandon Johnson, who's up for re-election. That guy is claiming credit for the drop in crime in Chicago. Is it fair for a Democrat to do that?
Well, I mean, they were in office the year before when violent crime was increasing. It's falling now. I think there are lots of reasons why it's falling. You look at arrests by the FBI. They're more than twice as much in last year as they were in 2024. You look at U.S. attorneys around the country who are appointed by the president. They are going after criminals in a way that there's no way that the Biden administration appointees did. You take Washington, D.C., for example. During the 4 years of the Biden administration, the U.S. attorney for Washington, D.C. refused to bring criminal charges against 67% of those who were arrested by police there. Under Trump, that's fallen from 67% to 4%. So they're bringing charges against 96% versus 33% that was occurring under Biden. And not only are they bringing charges against them, they're bringing serious charges against them. Under the Biden administration, even the ones that they brought charges against were often slaps on the wrists. So, you have those changes that occur. And, it's not rocket science. If you want to reduce crime, you have to make it riskier for criminals to commit crime. And there's been a sea change in terms of doing those things. Democrats just haven't believed that was what you do to reduce crime. And there have been other changes. Obviously the change in how you deal with illegal aliens. We go from this record flood of illegal aliens coming into the country to record sealing the border and deportations. 70% of the illegal aliens who have been deported under the Trump administration had criminal records. Now, it's amazing to me how the media and groups like the Cato Institute, that gets a lot of attention, go and kind of play with these numbers. So they only want to count a criminal record if you've been convicted of a crime, not whether you've been charged. What happens is that if somebody gets picked up by the police and they're charged with a crime, ICE in many parts of the country will be waiting there at the local county courthouse to pick people up, or they'll pick them up after they've been convicted. But you know, to me, part of your rap sheet was not only whether you've been convicted, but whether you've been charged with crimes. And I was just seeing a case yesterday in Northern Virginia where an illegal alien had been selling and distributing fentanyl to high school students in Northern Virginia, and there had been some overdoses that had occurred. He was picked up by the police, but it's the type of case where people on the left will say, well, that if we deport him, that can't count as deporting somebody who's a criminal. You have to actually go through the legal process to convict him. The problem is going through the legal process is unbelievably costly for something like that. You're talking about easily hundreds of thousands of dollars. And not only that, but because you have the prosecution's costs, you have the court costs, you have the public defender costs that are there. But when the guy goes to prison, and in Virginia, since they're a sanctuary state now, they're not going to turn him over to ICE. You're not even going to turn him over even when he's eventually released. But let's say with the types of crimes that he is charged with, he could get 10 years in prison. You know, you're talking about real costs for going and imprisoning that person for 10 years. Right. And you know, you may be talking about total costs that are well over $600,000 when you add the costs of prison, when you add the court costs that are there. And so, you know, the question you have to ask is, okay, the guy's in the country illegally anyway. Shouldn't we just be able to go and deport him? But no, there are many people on the left, you know, and Cato and places like that said, no, we don't care whether he's an illegal alien who's already been charged. We insist that taxpayers have to go and bear hundreds of thousands, maybe well over $500,000 in total costs, legal costs, before we'll agree that this illegal alien should be able to be deported.
It is so maddening.
Is why?
Yeah.
Why should we have to spend that amount of money to go and deport somebody who's already in the country illegally? And I think what it shows is just how committed so many people are to open borders, that they're not even willing to go and say, okay, the person's been arrested. And some of these people have been arrested multiple times. You know, if somebody's been arrested...
Go to Kilmar Abrego Garcia. That guy was arrested multiple times, and you have a sitting senator who's willing to do everything to get him not only kept in this country but brought back to this country. So right. the Democrats have got to see that 15 to 20 million influx of people as potential voters going forward. It's obvious and it's frustrating. We're talking to John Lott Jr. John, are you looking at anything else on your radar we should tell people to keep their eyes out for?
Well, we have a number of things that we're doing. We're just about ready to put out a report looking at school shootings in the United States from 2000 through the end of last year. There are over 13,000 public schools in the United States that allow armed teachers there. And we've looked at anything from an accidental discharge all the way up to a mass public shooting. And there has not been one single attack in a school during school, anything near school hours, where school allows teachers and staff to carry, where anybody's been wounded or killed. All the attacks have occurred in places where teachers are banned from being able to go and carry. And I don't know, that's one thing that we're looking at. We just did a survey with McLaughlin and Associates asking people whether they support allowing armed teachers and staff in schools. And for parents that have school-aged kids, kindergarten through 12th grade, they supported allowing armed teachers by 58% to 30%. Even people who didn't have kids supported it by 50.2% to 38%.
That's amazing, and it makes complete sense. Safety in the schools. When bad guys know there's an armed resource officer, the chance that a teacher, a trained teacher, has a firearm, they tend to want to find another target. Great information. I encourage people to visit crimeresearch.org. The work that John and his crew put out is just flawless. Great data and great analysis. My friend, thank you for always making time for us. We appreciate you.
Well, thanks for being there, Mike. You make a big difference.
I hope so. We're trying. We still have 68 days to work before midterms. But thank you, John Lott. There he goes.